the Lord is my foundation and God. And so the foundation of All Things Well Collective is the fruits of the Spirit. So when you're well, you're going to have love, you're going to have joy, you're going to have peace, you're going to have patience, you're going to have gentleness, goodness, kindness, faithfulness, self-control, all of these things, right? When you look at somebody, you can tell if they're well and you can tell if they're unwell. And so it's based off of the fruit that you bear.
Welcome to The Exit Interview, a podcast for Black educators. This podcast is more than storytelling, it's archival justice. For too long, the voices of Black educators who have left traditional spaces in education have been silenced, dismissed, or left out of the record. Here, we reclaim that narrative. Every interview is a living archive capturing the wisdom, resilience, and truth of Black educators who have shaped classrooms, communities, and generations. Together, we name the challenges: racial battle fatigue, systemic inequities, the weight of caring too much, but we also honor the brilliance and joy that Black educators bring, the creativity, the innovation, the care, and the deep legacy of resilience. Each episode is both a testimony and an offering, an act of preservation for those who came before, and a guide for those still walking this path today. By listening, you are helping to ensure that these stories are not lost, but held, celebrated, and passed forward. So take a breath, settle in, and join us as we honor the past, uplift the present, and reimagine the future of education together. All right, folks, welcome back to The Exit Interview, a podcast for Black educators. It's me, your host, Dr. Asia, and I'm back. Now, before we start, I'm going to say I've been waiting for this interview for a minute.
Come on, waiting for it.
I've been waiting for this for a minute. Whitney Tolliver and I met through Mia. Now, by now, y'all should know Mia Street because I have shouted her out on several folks' interviews, right? Because she's connecting left and right me with folks. But waiting for this interview, Whitney and I met a while back. I think you were still in the administration space. Is that correct?
I think I was like maybe a month or a couple of weeks removed from my AP position. So I had just quit my job.
Yeah. And I was like, when we getting on the show? And that was how long ago, sis?
About a year and a half, almost 2 years ago. Yeah.
So let me let y'all know out here in these streets, I am very committed. So welcome to the show, Whitney Tolliver. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Glad you're here.
Hello, everyone. So my name is Whitney Tolliver, as Asia just mentioned. I am a Wichita, Kansas native. So, like Dorothy, I click my heels 3 times and I'm home. I moved to the Dallas area in 2014, I believe. It was like right after my mother passed away. And I was like, I need something new. I need some new scenery. And it was probably the best decision I ever could have made, moving to Dallas. I worked in a couple of different districts and kind of navigated through the educational system. And here I am today. Some of the things that I love to do, because you said in this portion, we're not talking all about, the education.
We're not giving all the details just yet.
Let me give you the nitty gritty about what I like to do in my pastime. So I like to take long walks. Just kidding. No, kind of not. I enjoy nature, right? Music is my thing. I enjoy cooking. I'm all about being hospitable and loving on people. That's kind of my superpower. So yeah, I like to just chill. I'm almost 40. So in this auntie era of my life that I'm entering into, I am chilling out here in these streets.
I love it. Whitney and I, so my maiden name out there, folks, is Tolliver. And so that was the first thing I said to her when we met a while back, was like, let's figure out if we're related in some capacity.
We got to see.
Yeah, right? And we couldn't trace it back to the same plantation. but we've been kicking it ever since. And we have like very similar work when it comes to healing and wellness. And she'll tell you a little bit about her work for sure. But let's go ahead and jump into the interview. So first question, tell us about your journey into education. How did you know that education was for you?
So education was not my first choice. I feel like education came and chased me down. My undergrad degree is in integrated marketing communications. And so right out the gate, I always wanted to do events. So everyone that was getting the same degree as myself, they wanted to go work for a PR firm or marketing. And I'm like, I just want to do events. And so every time that I would attempt to find an event, position, or I thought I was going to go through a hotel in like the hospitality department to plan conferences and weddings and those sorts of things. And it's like every single door was closed. And the door that was open always was working with kids. And it was like I always found myself doing something, whether it was in a family event where I'm facilitating something for the kids to, make hot cocoa at the Christmas events, or somebody's kids want to come and I'm taking them to go do an event. I'm working with the kids at church. And so the children and the relationships, they always found me. And I was working when I graduated from my undergrad degree. I was working as I also went back to school to become a cosmetologist. And while I'm working as a cosmetologist, I was also working as a substitute teacher. Well, I really enjoyed those babies. And it's like every time I would go into a school, I was only in there for one day. And I'm like, but I want to build these relationships. So then I went from being a substitute teacher to a paraprofessional. And while I was working as a paraprofessional, like this was nobody but God. I went to a PD training, and the university that I had graduated with, were launching this new program, master's program, where you could work as a paraprofessional. And if you had a degree in something else other than education, you could go back and get your master's degree in early childhood education while using your paraprofessional work as your student teaching. So you wouldn't have to like quit your job and like be without pay. Like it was all wrapped into this package. And I mean, when I tell you, like, I still can remember the day when I was sitting in that PD session and the presenter get up and speak about this program. And I was like, this is a prayer that's being answered. Like, and I don't even think I had spoke the prayer out to anybody, but it was like God knew. And went and had an interview and applied for the program, got in, and that's where the education program or education started for me.
Oh, I love that. And I'm curious, you went to school, like you said, to get in for your bachelor's in one topic, moved on to cosmetology, you're a para, and now we're back in school to get our master's. So then my question is, when you were going through these different programs and like switching it up, what was the conversation with your family and community? Were they like, oh, this is great? Or like, pick a job and sit with it? What was that like?
Ma'am. So for whatever reason, I've had, what did they say, 50, 11? I've had about 50, 11 jobs in different parts of my life. And what's crazy is I have many different talents, and some things don't go together and they don't make sense. And I'm like, I don't know where this came from. But my dad, I remember him being like, and my mom, really, she was like, okay, you need to utilize this undergrad degree. Like, we didn't spend all this money on you getting this degree. Like, you need to utilize this degree. Well, doing hair was something that I had always done as like a hobby. Like, I was always doing my friend's hair. I mean, I could do a mean flat iron. Now they call it a silk press, honey. That was my thing. And so going to cosmetology school, that just made sense. Like, I even had an auntie that was like, I thought you were going to go to culinary school because, like I said, I've had many different talents and abilities that don't all go together, but there's a way I can be a chef and a cosmetologist and an educator, like all these different things and do them well, right? So I've had different parts of my life where I've been able to explore. So I said all that to say the conversations while all of these things were going on, while I'm making these transitions, my parents didn't understand. And I'm sure I had family and friends looking like, girl, you changed jobs. Like you changed your underwear. I'm sure I had that going on. So, there are so many gifts and talents that I've been blessed to have, but I just can't do everything well. So to answer your question, while I was going through these different professions and transitions, my parents, no, they were not with it. They were trying to figure out what is Whitney doing? Utilize that undergrad degree that we paid for. But then at the same time, God has blessed them to see, or God has blessed my dad. My mom is deceased, but God has blessed my dad to see like how it all comes together and makes sense. All right. So I said all that to say, like, after I got my master's degree in teaching, he wasn't quite with it at first. He was like, this is more money. But then when I became a teacher, it's like, now, my daughter, she a teacher now. Yeah, and then when I became an AP, he telling like I'm going back home. And he's like, now my daughter, she a principal now. Daddy, I'm not a principal, man. I'm an assistant principal. That's two different things. But so very, very proud. And even when I made the step to quit my job and leave education, I didn't tell my dad right away. And when I finally told him, what was so dope about this whole situation is like God allowed me to see my dad's love and covering for me because my dad knew how miserable I had become. Like it would be times where I would call my dad up and I'm just crying, like crying all evening. And he's like, I need you to calm down because like you were about to have a nervous breakdown. Like, and I would hang up the phone with him and still continue to cry. And, my whole attitude and everything, I was just like, I was a different person. So he could see how unhappy I was even before I even told him how unhappy I was. So when I went to go tell him that I'm no longer an assistant principal anymore and I'm not working in education, looking for a different job, he was disappointed. I don't even know if I would say that he was disappointed. My daddy is very much so like you grab a job that you get benefits on and you have a pension and you going to split pretty. Yes, ma'am. And so that was his mindset of like, okay, you need to be making sure you have some benefits and this, that, and the other. So that was his mindset. And then making sure I had a good salary to go along with it. But he wasn't mad and he completely understood why I left the job. And so that made me feel covered. I didn't feel like, man, like, so to get his approval to know that I'm entering this entrepreneurial space, that was just like all the joy, all the love and joy that I needed.
Thank you so much for answering that question. And we'll probably talk a little bit more about that in our, that couple questions from now. So kind of going back a little bit, you talked about being like, I was a teacher, then an AP. Tell us about your teaching journey. Tell us about your AP journey. We want to know all the parts.
Yeah. So I love the babies. I know we have a lot of folks out there that don't quite understand, like, you work with kindergarten? Like that, those are my babies. I taught first grade, I taught kindergarten and third grade. And the last year when I taught third grade, I had a chance to have those babies twice. So I had those babies when they were in kindergarten, and then I had them when they were in third grade. And so that was like the dopest experience because they already knew me. They knew my personality. They knew my love for them. The parents that I had, they already knew, how I was and how I ran my classroom. And so that just strengthened the relationship even more. When I became an assistant principal, so
Hold that thought. Because I
go
see
ahead, go
you
ahead.
on the exit interview, we need all the details. So you just said,
You did all
I
these.
taught this and I taught that. Then how long did you teach? Where did you teach? Yeah, we're nosy on the exit interview.
You nosy? Okay, I gotta dig a little
We want to
deeper.
know about the folks, like the mentors, folks that supported you, some wild times. We want to know all those things.
Some wild times. Okay,
Yeah.
so let me go back and dig a little deeper. So
Yes.
when I first moved here to Dallas, so I was a substitute and a paraprofessional in Kansas. And when I moved to Dallas and I started working for a charter school, and they brought me in as a resident teacher. So basically, what that role was, to summarize it, I was like an in-house sub. So I would go in and fill in when need be. It was really a cool role because I got a chance to see what was going on all over the building, plus work with kids at different ages. So it was really, really cool. And so I did that for half a semester or half a school year rather. And then from there, then I got my job as a first grade teacher. And it was really, really dope. That was probably like my hardest year because you are trying to navigate a full classroom, and I think I had like 26 kids like cramped into a classroom. It was not a big classroom. I had kids sitting at my teacher table, like that was their permanent desk because it was just so many kids. But it was probably one of the funnest years that I had. I can still remember like some of my students and like their personalities. And I mean, they may have been the students that gave me the most trouble, but it was like they were the ones that, were the closest to me. Like it was a dope experience. And that was a time where I got to experience the load of education. And that made me I can remember. So you asked for all the juicy details. I can be a workaholic because I like to pour my all into whatever it is that I'm doing because I want to do it with excellence. I'm learning that I can't do it with perfection, but I can do it with excellence. And so I would take stuff home. I mean, I'm getting there early, I'm working all day, and then I'm trying to take stuff home. Well, all I was thinking about was work. There was one day that I came home and I'm clicking on the lights not coming on. It's a little warm in the apartment. I'm like, okay, what's going on? I did not pay my electric bill, not because I didn't have the money. It was not on, automatic withdrawal. I kept seeing the notices, but I get like, I'm going to get to it. I'm going to get to it. I'm going to get to it. I never got to it. And baby, this was the day. This was the day. And baby, they got to me. And I have always been a lover of ice cream. And so that's like I say self-care. Now I probably need to like lay out. I know I need to lay out the ice cream, but that was like, I had just bought me some ice cream. I was going to go home, take me a bath, eat me some ice cream and do some more work. Ma'am, I had to go get a hotel that night because I didn't have any electricity and that ice cream melted. But you know what I decided not to do that night was work. I was like, I am putting work before my own needs. And like, what? Work is going to be there. Work can wait. And so that was kind of like some first aha moments of like this whole work life balance. I'm not going to say that it got corrected then. That was probably the beginning of the, worst of it. But so yeah, that was the first job. And because that workload was so intense, I decided to transition into an ISD down here. So in Texas, we have ISDs and we have charter schools, independent school district. And one of the things moving from Kansas, where we only have like one school district, and then moving to a metroplex where you have hundreds of school districts, is you have to find the right fit. Like, what's the culture that fits with me? And so I didn't necessarily feel like that charter school was the right fit. Then I transitioned to the ISD. Well, I don't know that that was the right fit either. I can remember the orientation that we went to first day before we even got started. The principal told us we couldn't take days off. And she's like, I just lost my mom and I just lost my dad and we buried them and I didn't have to take any days off. So if I didn't have to take days off, you don't need to take days off. So you need to go and get your vitamins and whatever to make sure that your immune system is right and that everything is together so that you don't have to take days off. And so I'm young, impressionable. And so I can remember I left that orientation and I went to Whole Foods and my dad calls me up and he's like, what you doing? What you doing with? I'm like, I'm in the store, getting some vitamins. Well, I haven't been like, I'm not like a vitamin taker. I'm trying to be better, but at the time I definitely was, that was not something I'm like, yeah, I'm taking this supplement and this supplement. He was like, you doing what? I'm like, yeah, like this new job, this principal said no days off. Like we have to be there every single day. And so my dad, who has gotten perfect attendance on his job, like he's all about being punctual. Like you got to be there before time to be on time, like all of that. He was like, no, ma'am, they have given you days off. And if you need to take a day off, you will be taking a day off. And fast forward to, I can remember I tried to follow the rules of like what my principal's rules were, because that was not a district rule.
We can't fast forward. We got to rewind. Because I was
Yes.
waiting for you to finish this so I can come in.
Uh-huh.
The level of toxicity in education. And the fact that this principal stood up and felt with their whole chest that was something that was okay. And now on the back end, I'm sure you're thinking, wild. But like you said, this person knew that they had younger folks who are working and they're just trying to please. And if they themselves are in an older generation, perfect attendance, we keep showing. And to pass that down is so harmful. And that's how so many of us who are in the spaces of supporting educators like you and I are, we have to undo all of that.
Yeah.
All of that toxic work culture that is in the name of excellence, that's in the name of for the kids. On top
Yes.
of the things that our parents, like you just said a little bit about, they have the things that they've put into us. Then we go into a workplace and they're like, yeah, double down on what their parents. And then people burn up, they get sick, they quit, they push off appointments and end up finding out they have cancer. Right. We just had someone that came on, Dr. Ashley, and she talked about like avoiding going to the doctor. She knew that something was wrong and found out she had breast cancer and then tried to put off the double mastectomy until spring break. Right. Like, no, we have testing. So can we put this off until March? It was January and she had to have a double mastectomy. So this swirling around of this toxic way of showing up as educators. And then in the same conversation, why don't we have more teachers? Why are we having a shortage? Sweetheart, because your expectations are unacceptable. They're unrealistic. And I just wanted to pause and say, that is insane. And I don't use that word lightly. And I would love to know, when this person said this, did you look around or was there a chatter, any kind of whispering after that? Or people were just kind of like, okay, because you went got vitamins.
I would have got vitamins, baby. I said, okay, well, my immune system has to be. I can't remember what was happening in the room, but I will tell you the grief part of my life got hit because I had just lost my mom like 2 years prior to that. And I had to take off, like, I had to take off work. Like, even to this day, like, there's still times where I'm grieving my mom, not to that extent, but I was definitely in a grieving season of my life. And so I think that was probably what hit me the hardest and most of like, how in the world did this woman bury her parents and she didn't take off of work? Like that was what was like kind of wild to me of like something she's off, you know? But
Yeah.
like that was wild. That was
And
wild.
those are the same folks who get promoted to leadership. Right. And
For
that,
her, I was gonna say, I'm sorry. For her, it was actually the opposite. She got walked out in the middle of the school
oh,
year.
please. Now, hold on. Let's talk about this for a second. I mean, yeah, she got walked out, but somebody told her that she was fit to be a leader. Like someone saw her in her AP role or her teacher role and said like, oh yeah, she definitely is the leadership type. And so she got walked out. But how many people did she cause harm to? Even if it was a single day, even if she got walked out right after that speech, she caused harm, right? And so I just want to say, like, yeah, she got walked out. We're going to get to that. But in the interim, there's students, there's families, there's educators who tell the story that you're telling. And that impacted them in these ways that we'll never know, right? In really harmful ways. And then also folks who had decided like that was their last day of work, right?
Yeah.
And so I just wanted to pause because, you know, we have lots of great stories in education, but these toxic administrators and managers and directors, they are all over the country causing harm and at the same time asking about shortages and like not seeing how they're playing a role in that issue. But go ahead.
So to piggyback on kind of some of the things that you're talking about, like with the toxicity with the APs and the principals and whatnot, I put on my administrator hat and I think about both sides of it. She was in the wrong completely, like completely, as so many are. But I also worry about what comes down from the higher ups that we don't see, what comes down from, because there are pressures and things that like, it's like we're the buffers as administrators, we're the buffers between the higher ups and then the teachers. It's just, I wish there was a way to show the administrators that are on the campus level, like, how can you properly filter that and what type of SOPs can be put into place so that you're prioritizing wellness, not only for your teachers, but for yourself while still getting the things done. Because we were at a campus where, I mean, the test scores and things were very, very low. And so I'm sure she had a lot of pressure coming down on her. But the way she went about that thing, it drove everybody to burnout. I mean,
Yeah,
it was
the pendulum swung too far over. And so like what you're saying is like, wait, what is where's the middle ground?
Yes.
Right? And perfect attendance doesn't mean that I'm showing up perfect, like perfectly. And I think that's the mistake is like your body's in the classroom. Well, your mind could be elsewhere. And your body could be sick in the classroom and make children sick in the classroom. And so this is a need. We have to have attendance, like you just said, burnout, racial battle fatigue, compassion fatigue are all the things that can and do happen when we don't take into account the human experience outside of the classroom or outside of the school. You know what I mean? I'm saying, you know what I mean,
Yeah,
but you know,
no,
I know what I mean. Yes.
and to piggyback on, you were talking about the health issues. Actually, I think it was that school year or the next school year, I ended up having a surgery, which now looking back on it, I don't know that it was necessarily that I needed to have that surgery. I was having some stomach pains and like they just would not go away after having a colonoscopy a couple of times, an endoscopy. My mom, she had colon cancer. So anytime stomach pain from myself or my sister come up, we're like, wait a minute. And they couldn't figure out what was going on. So they ended up having to go in and do this invasive surgery. And after I kind of like started getting well and whatnot, I honestly think at the end of the day, I probably wasn't using the bathroom properly. You know what I'm saying? Because when they went into the to do the surgery, they did end up taking like some fibroids. So it was like, while we're in there, let's go ahead and take out some fibroids. But when it came to my stomach issues, they couldn't find anything. It was crazy. And so I was going to the doctor. Your body holds stress. Your body holds stress in different parts of your body. You may have aches and pains and losing hair and growths and different things going on, hot flashes, that may not be associated with perimenopause or menopause. Your body is just trying to figure out what to do with this stress. So, yeah, crazy.
Yeah. And this is why I said, let's back up and kind of go through this story because there's so many nuggets that people need to be hearing, right? You are not the first person on the show that's talked about illness and surgeries and things like that. And pausing to say, like, thinking back, I feel like it was more about the workplace or I felt something was off, but I pushed it off then it became a surgery when it didn't have to, or I wasn't drinking water and now I have problems with my kidneys. Like, there's like so many of us who again are showing up in school, but because we're not able to use the restroom without rushing, or we're not eating our food, chewing our food so that we can get proper fiber and digestion is working properly, that we just keep pushing our health down the road in hopes that when we finally have time that we'll get better. And that's not necessarily the case. Like some people can, but we know that also educators, a lot of us get sick during break because our body's been glued together with coffee and desk chocolate. And now at Christmas break, we're sick for 2 weeks.
Yes. You just preached a whole sermon right there. Yeah.
So continue, tell us about, that part of your education journey. And if you want to continue on, talk about your AP and how you got there. But yeah, I'd love to hear more. We'd love to hear more.
Absolutely. So I'm sure you already know the end of this story. I did not stay at that district or that school very long. I ended up transitioning to another ISD because, like I said, it's almost like when you're here in this large metroplex, you have to figure out what's the right fit. And I went to the next district where I say that the leader saved my life. Absolutely love her. Absolutely love her. She's still near and dear to my heart to this day. But one of the things that a factor with wellness at that district or at that school is my first year working there, I was the only African American female there. So while I was saved from the craziness of like, you can't take off of work and, some of the other situations that were going on at the other district, I walked into a space where I was the only one. And so I had to try to figure out how to navigate that space. And there were times where I felt, don't get me wrong, I got along with everybody. Everybody loved me, but there were definitely times where I felt spotted or I felt like I didn't belong or, some of the conversations I couldn't really vibe with because that was not my story. You know, when you think of a African American woman, oftentimes we're single. Oftentimes, I don't want to say oftentimes, but sometimes we don't have kids. So, like when you're sitting at lunch and talking about taking your kids with your husband to the soccer field and doing all this, like I can't relate to that. I'm not saying that's every Black woman, but it was different, right? And that kind of played a little bit of a role into what it did is it gave me a voice because at the end of the year, and now this is why I love this principal so much because she liked to reflect. And one of the things that she would ask us is, what is it that I can do better? So she wasn't just about giving us feedback, but she was like, what can I do to be better? And I was like, can we hire some more African American or more diverse people, more men, some Hispanics, some Asians, some something? And she listened. And so from that moment on, she always put me on the hiring committee, which may or may not have been unheard of because I was like, you know, second year teacher, but always on the hiring committee. And I know it to some, they might have been like, well, you look like the token Black, well, whatever. We needed more diversity. And that school was known for not hiring many African Americans or diversity because a lot of the teachers or people thought that this was like a white school. And so from there, she began to like bring in more. I got a chance to co-chair the diversity and inclusion committee. So I was able to present one time and we did like a whole workshop on diversity and inclusion. And it really kind of opened up some dialogue around kind of my first year because I had when we would like break out into small groups, I had one teacher go, I wondered how you felt. And she was Caucasian. She's like, I wonder how you felt like being the only Black, the only African American teacher in the space. So it's like it was evident, you know what I'm saying? Like it was evident that I was the only one, but I didn't feel unsafe or anything like that because like I said, I was rescued from my old district where I had a lot more going on and bigger fish to fry than that. But this definitely was something that was an issue for me. Within that space, that's where I began to think like, where do I want to go from here? Because I don't want to be complacent. I enjoyed teaching. I built some amazing relationships with my students, with my families, with staff members. But I knew me being a 30-year teacher, that was not in the plan for me. And so I began to think about where am I going next? And I also met with my retirement, specialist. And he's like, if you can get your top 5 years, that's what's going to base your retirement off of your top five salaries. Your retirement is going to be based off of that. So then I got to thinking about future and I'm like, I can definitely go into admin. Some things happened between that, but, got my certification to become an administrator and then got my first AP job. Actually, hold on, I'm skipping a year. So I did interview one year to become an AP and I wasn't ready. Like God knew I wasn't ready, but my aunt was pushing me of like, go get that experience. And I'm so glad I did because that prepared me for the next year. So what's funny is when I went into that first interview, that first year, I had natural hair. So before I got locked up, I used to have a fro. And so and I had in my mind of like, this is the type of administrator that they're wanting because I didn't see too many people in leadership that look like me. So I was like, let me make sure I straighten my hair and let me make sure I do this. And, I'm all buttoned up and this, that, and the other, right? And so I kid you not, the day that we had the interview, it was raining and it was humid. And we know what happens to natural hair after it's been silked out. I had like borderline of fro. Like it was just like, I was so uncomfortable. I remember just being like, I couldn't even really answer the questions thoroughly because I was so uncomfortable. But that set me up for the next year. That next year, I went in with my fro. I didn't have any heel. Like I don't mind wearing heels, but I was like on my way to I think I was on my way to Baltimore, like right after that. So I was like, I'm about to have on my flats. I still had on my blazer. I was still cute. But I was like, I'm coming in and showing up as me. And literally when I sit down in the chair, I had a whole different swag about me. I was Whitney instead of trying to be this person that I thought that they were looking for. And when I left the interview, I was like, I presented to them all that I am and who I can be. And if they want it, they want it. If they don't, they don't. And that's when I got the job. So yeah.
It's so interesting that I think that somewhere in our childhood, we see on TV or in movies a corporate girly. And especially now with social media, younger generations see the corporate girly, whatever they look like. And there's always this straight hair narrative, the high heel, the maybe for some folks stockings or whatever, or whatever, but it has to be the everything you're describing, how we go into a situation, how we show up. That's our first impression. And people are like, yeah, that's why you should dress up. That's why you should wear a suit. But then it also says, I'll be wearing that silk press forever. I have to maintain that. And it's like, what does it mean to people are already code switching in their jobs for other things? And I got to code switch my hair and damage it and keep it a certain way until, and sometimes folks like, wait, this is the day I'm going to go natural and see what happens. And they're like, oh, your hair is so, and it's over. But some folks will just be trapped in that corporate girly aesthetic for as long as their career is. And so I'm not for or against that, but I'm just thinking, when you said that you slicked your hair down, you did a silk press and it was raining, I was like, oh, this is going to be something. Yeah, because people need to hear that, whether they work for themselves or other people. Who are you? Like, what ways can you be your authentic self? Even the smallest amount, right? To have some small amount of liberation, even in the workplace. And for some of us, it can be hair. Some people it can't be, but we have to keep asking ourselves things like that.
That's real.
Yeah.
And people that have known me and grown up with me, they know that my flat iron, honey, we used to call it a flat iron. My flat iron and my wrap, it used to be on point, and I've had the short pixie, Holly Berry cut. I've had all the things. But at this time in my life, that's no longer me, right? Or like you said, maybe I silk press it one day, but then the next day it's back natural. So even me, most of the time it was natural. So me showing up with that silk press, that's not Whitney every day. That was not Whitney every day. Not at that time. I had evolved into something, someone else.
What's up, beautiful people? Real quick, I want to talk to you about something. If you're a Black educator or used to be a Black educator and you've ever felt like the job asked you to give everything and left you nothing, we got something for you. My good friend Stacey Taylor Brandon and I have created Podcast and Pause, an unbooked club for Black educators. Here's how it works. You listen to a curated episode of the Exit Interview on your own time, in the car, on a walk, while you're folding laundry, just like you're doing now. Then we come back together on Zoom for a real conversation about what you heard, what it brought up, and what it means to be well as a Black educator, in the classroom, outside the classroom, and beyond. This isn't a training. This isn't a to-do list. It's a soft place to land, a space to reflect, to breathe, to laugh a little, and remember, you're not alone. So if you've been needing community that gets it, come pause with us. Check the show notes for more information. Follow me on Instagram, and we'll see you there. All right, peace. So tell us about your work as an AP, because so many educators, go back to school, get certifications or licensure to be an administrator. And it feels like for folks, like you say, you got those folks who 30 years in the classroom or as a para or whatever, and you have folks who've made the decision to go into admin. So what was that time like for you?
So super exciting. When I got the call, I got the school that I wanted, right? You could just tell in the interview, because it was a panel, and you could tell in the interview that that was the fit, it was a vibe between myself and the principal. And, I went in green and ready to work hard. And I don't know that I paced myself at the beginning, because I was just like, I just want to just do and be all things to everyone. Because as I mentioned to you, I'm all about loving on people and all of the things. And I made sure that I allowed that part of myself to show up in that space early on as an AP. So my teachers knew I was all about them and advocating for them. But you got to also understand, when you're an assistant principal, you're multitasking. So you're the LPAC director, you're the or committee person, you're doing the SPED cases, you're doing ARDS, which is like our special education, you're doing behavior. Like behavior is like a huge part of what you do. I was the testing coordinator. Like there were so many different roles that in some districts, there might be one person assigned to this role, whereas I had all these roles assigned to me, in addition to me wanting to always make sure that my heart work was being done, me loving on my teachers in some way, whether I was decorating the lounge or getting donations of food for them or just doing something to let them know that I loved them. And it was wow. Like it was a lot. Regardless of where you're at, you're assigned. When I say where you're at geographically, state wise, you're going to always have teachers that you're assigned to evaluate. So you're going to have, a heavy roster of that. And the feedback forms that you would have to do, they were like reports, I called them like book reports. And so I developed some unhealthy habits because I couldn't always do my work at work. I had to do my work at home, like the busy work, so to speak, those reports and things. And so I would get off of work. Now, mind you, like I'm getting to work, most of the time I'm getting to work early, so it's dark outside, and then get home, probably dark outside because I'm staying later. So I would come home, I would eat, kind of chill out for a second, and then I would take what I called a nap. Maybe I went to bed at like 9 or 10, and then I would wake up at like midnight and write up a report, stay up for like 2 hours, write a report, maybe get like another 30, 45 minutes, and then like wake up again, write another report. I know it didn't make any sense. It didn't make any sense. Like I didn't do this. I can't say every night. Every night was not like that. But when I had those deadlines, because I'm a deadline person, like I want to make sure that I'm hitting my deadlines, and I don't want anybody coming for me talking about you didn't turn in X, Y, and Z. No, it's turned in, but I always sacrifice a lot in order to get that done. So my sleep habits would be off sometimes because I would go to work tired. Like, this is crazy. Every morning I would make me a nice cup of coffee. Like that was just like part of my routine and my habit. And not just drinking the coffee, but just getting up and the act of making the coffee, smelling the coffee as I'm waking up, like that was important to me. But I would do all that work to make my coffee only to set the cup down on my desk when I got there, and I didn't drink it. Pack my lunch. I would eat, but maybe I didn't eat until 1 or, 2 or dismissal. I don't know that I was the best at advocating for myself to say, hey, like I need to take a break, or because you're always on as an administrator. You go into the bathroom, and if you took your walkie talkie in with you, it's like, Tolliver, we need you. Tolliver, we need you. It's like, I can't even sit down to use the bathroom. It's just, so you were just always on. And knowing what I know now, which is hard because that's something new. You don't know what you're getting into, but I would have definitely put different boundaries in place and advocated for myself more to be like, this is the time I'm carving out. This is the time that I'm leaving each day. This is the time that I'm going to get there in the morning. What gets done gets done. What doesn't get done, if I miss a deadline, it might be okay. Sometimes we do things because we don't want to hear other people's reactions, or we want them to look at us favorably. And that can't be at the detriment of you, or that shouldn't have been at the detriment of me. Like, so what if they are not pleased with what it is that I do? And that's where I talked about that. I'm a perfectionist, but kind of getting out of that, doing everything with perfection, but with excellence. You can't be perfect.
You've shared a lot in this little couple minutes, and I'm just sitting here thinking about their sleep pattern, and I'm thinking about like you said, the bathroom and the coffee and all the things. And there are folks who are probably listening to this exit interview and thinking like, that's me. Like right now, that's what I'm going through. Or when I'm AP, I won't do that. I'll do X, Y, and Z. Right?
That's what you're saying. Like, I'm gonna be the exception, okay?
Yeah. And so I want folks to listen to someone who was an AP and take note. Like you said, better boundaries around rest, better boundaries around workload, better boundaries around using the restroom or things like that. And yeah, an AP position and teaching position, paraprofessional, dean, early childhood, higher education, all of it, because it's like the deadline, the pile never ends. I remember as an educator, I used to, grade papers, and I cleared the whole basket, and the next day the basket be full again. And so I had to slow down. Like, there's going to be more work tomorrow, and I'm trying to burn it up to have some like relief instead of just being relieved now. instead of giving myself permission now to say, like, you're doing a good job. You don't have to be rushing all the time. Instead of that, it's an anxiety. And I think that school districts put that anxiety, like, we got to get to school. We have to not miss. We got to get to, and it's all this pressure, right? It's all this pressure. And the folks who are sacrificing this are always the kids, all the humans involved, but we just keep that narrative going. Yeah. And so thinking about that pacing, and you kind of alluded to this earlier when talking about your dad, what is it you were in an AP for some time? What was it that helped you decide it's time for you to go? Like, what was that decision?
I don't know. There was a couple of things, but it's like when you kind of get to that point of like, I'm not happy. And so I began to look for other positions. I was an AP for 2 years. And so I began to look for positions like that's the end of like the first year, nothing. I didn't get anything. I had an interview for one position that I really, really wanted, but God closed that door and I now know why, which I'm grateful for.
So wait, just to interrupt you. So you knew you weren't happy after the first year.
It was April of that first year. Like I can tell you the month because there was something specific that happened. I'm not going to go into it, but it was something that was like this moment of like, this is probably, and it's not even that, because I was a good AP. You know what I'm saying? Somebody would be like, well, you wasn't great. I was a good AP. And I could have very easily gone to another school or another district, but I was just worried that I would have, like, I would feel the same way. That workload is probably not going anywhere. Now, there's many different factors that go into this, the students you serve, the leadership, that you serve with, the teachers that you serve. There's many different factors that contribute to all of this. And so, yeah, I was just like, I think I'm good. I'm beginning to be unhappy. And so I was trying to make a move. And then that second year I came back and I was actually the summer school principal during that summer, which that was really, really cool. My teachers, they worked hard for me. It was a good time, good time. And yeah, so you asked me about when did I know that it was time for me
Yeah.
to,
So you
yeah.
knew that, and then you started to look. And so you're at the end of your second year.
So then I get to, I think it was April again, something about April. So April is when my birthday is. And so it's something about the April. And that second year is when I believe I put in my resignation to say I wouldn't be returning. And I called my cousin. So my cousin, I'd like to call him my therapist during that time. And so he would kind of help me navigate through some situations that I was really struggling with of like, how do I have this difficult conversations or this is what's happening? How do I navigate this? And so he kind of knew what was going on and how I was feeling. And I called him like 6 o'clock in the morning. I was on my way to work and I was like, hey, I think I'm going to resign from my job. And he's like, okay, well, think about it, think about it and see what you want to do. And noon that day, I called him. It was like, I already put my resignation in. He was like, okay, you move quickly. But I had already been thinking like, this is just not. And so I knew like that's my anchor. And so I'm like, I know God is going to be with me with whatever decision that I choose to make. And I know it was going to all work out. And I want to also add on to that. There was some other facts. So this is the thing. Like I said, I began to be uncomfortable like that April of that first year. I moved into a house. I want to say that was also in April of my first year as an AP. Like I said, April, just things happen in April. And my commute became a lot longer. So in the morning, it was like about an hour to get to work. And then in the evening, it was about an hour and 15, an hour and a half to get home. So I was spending a lot of time in the car. My hips were hurting. My back already had issues with my back hurting because of just all the stress that I was holding in my body. So I wasn't well. My ankles were swelling up. Girl, my ankles looked like ham hocks. And I couldn't get them down. I was wearing compression socks like to go to sleep, plus wearing compression socks during the day. I remember me and my best friend went to the DR March of my second year, and I had compression socks on airplane, which I've never had to do that before. Like I've seen other people wear compression socks and my ankles still didn't go down. And I'm thinking, well, I'm not stressed anymore. I'm not walking in the hallways. Like I should be fine. My ankles still didn't go down. still was wearing compression socks throughout that trip. And like, it was just like all these things I remember of like, I'm thinking that my body is changing. I was having like a overgrowth of hair on my face. Like all of this was like hair. And I was like, my hormones, I was like, I'm just getting older. Like I remember looking in the mirror and crying and going, okay, God, I think 37, 30 at the time. And I'm like, okay, God, I'm just getting older. This is what's happening to my body. Help me to accept this. Um, it was just crazy. You know what I'm saying? Like just things happening that I thought this is just my life and my season of, this is what's happening. And come to find out it was like stress. It was crazy. But yeah. So it was a couple of things kind of like stacked on top of things that made me go, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Shout out to your cousin too. Your cousin was late to the game by that last time. And again, it's the swelling. And like you said, all these things are going on and people write it off as perimenopause and not wanting to admit like, oh, actually it's my workplace. Because what does it mean when we have to sit and say, my workplace is making me sick and I need to make some decisions to either go and just keep digging in and see what happens or go in a different direction, which is not in the plans or not in the cards. So you leave and I'll ask the question out of order than I normally do, but what are you doing now?
So now I still have 100 jobs, but I have a nonprofit called the Teacher Retreat. And so we're all about educator wellness and self care. The Teacher Retreat was actually started my second year as an AP. And it started in a notebook. I was gonna say I thought I had my notebook sitting here, but when I say it started in a notebook, I literally wrote down my mission, my vision, our goals, like all of that was just like I'm writing this stuff down, not knowing if any of these things are going to come to fruition. But it's like this is what is on my heart to do for educators. And we hosted our first event that May, Teacher Appreciation, the weekend before Teacher Appreciation Week. And that's when I knew I really had something. And then I got my 501c3 and fully developed that into a nonprofit. And so we're continuing to build on that. I also have for profit called All Things Well Collective. And when we think about all things being well, so, for me, I said, I talk, the Lord is my foundation and God. And so the foundation of All Things Well Collective is the fruits of the Spirit. So when you're well, you're going to have love, you're going to have joy, you're going to have peace, you're going to have patience, you're going to have gentleness, goodness, kindness, faithfulness, self-control, all of these things, right? When you look at somebody, you can tell if they're well and you can tell if they're unwell. And so it's based off of the fruit that you bear. So that was the foundation for All Things Well. And so with that, I do self-care planning and really allowing people to have time and space to assess where you're at and then make a plan based off of that data that we just collected. And oftentimes people think that when they're doing self care, one of the things I start the workshop off with is just a question before we dive into anything is when I say self care, what does that mean to you? And oftentimes you get like the spa, massages, trips, like it's all these big sometimes unattainable things of when it comes to self-care. And so with the self-care planning, we're looking at what is something that you can do in your everyday life. Like self-care needs to become a practice. Self-care needs to become a routine. You and I had a conversation about, I was telling you when I was an educator, sometimes I would be rushing so much in the morning to where only the parts that's getting lotion is just my face and if my elbows are out. But I got underneath my jeans, I got ashy ankles,
Dry.
so that's
Dry.
self-care. Yeah, it's wintertime and I'm just chapped. That's self-care. And so maybe your goal is to, 5 days out of the week, I'm gonna make sure I moisturize properly. Or I'm gonna exfoliate, like drinking your water, little small things that can end up building on those big things that you want to achieve. So, in education, we talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Like that's like our tool that we use when we're, trying to figure these kids out. That's one of the foundational tools that I use when it comes to these workshops and helping teachers to recognize where you at on this hierarchy. Where are you struggling with? Are you getting enough sleep? Are you getting enough? What's your health looking like? What's your family connections and relationships looking like? So that you can get to that self-actualization space with the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? We apply it, we use that when we're talking about our students that we're serving, but we need to use that when we're talking about ourselves. So one more thing that I do, so I'm also the general manager for Lead Strong. And so we're a coach consultancy and we do leadership development and team facilitation on the leadership level. Yes, it is.
So
That's all my jobs at this
that's a
point.
lot of jobs. you know, and so thinking about your work with educators, loving on them, supporting them with their rest plans and things like that, and having been in education as long as you have, then my next question is, based on what you heard as a teacher, what you saw in her as an AP, what you've seen here in your work now, what do you believe that schools and districts and unions can do to retain Black educators based on your own experience?
So we're speaking about Black educators, but not just for Black educators, but educators in general. Some of this PD, like when I hear professional development, I cringe. Because as an educator, I'd be like, I just want to be in my classroom doing my job, or I just need to be in my office doing my job. Districts spend so much money on professional development in the sense of like all these different tools that they want us to use and not thinking about the things that we already have in our toolbox. So you've already, most of the time, have equipped me to teach reading well or to teach math well or to handle behavior wellness. You know, some folks still struggle. I get that, right? But for your ones that are doing it well, like let me go and plan or let me go and do what I need to do so that I can be prepared and I don't have to take these things home. So really being thoughtful about the professional development that they're offering and how much of it. And then when you are having professional development, are you pouring into the humanness of the educator and not just the professional part of the educator, right? We are expected to check everything at the door. And that's just not possible. You know, when you think about like when my mom was sick, when I was a caregiver, I couldn't check that at the door. When she passed away, I couldn't check that at the door. You know, if you are married and you are having some marital issues, you can't check that out the door. Your kid is acting up. You can't check that at the door. There's just things that you cannot check at the door. And what are you doing? I'm saying you, the districts, what are they doing to help educators be well every day? And it could be something as simple as like you walk around and relieve teachers to see if they need a restroom break. Or one of the things that I like to do, like when I would have conferences with my educators, is yes, we would go over their observation data and all of that, but I also wanted to know more about them. So getting to know more about that educator on a human level, if they're in school, ask them about their master's program or how can I assist? If they have kids and how's little Johnny's football game or like really taking an interest in these teachers instead of thinking of them as workhorses, but thinking of them as humans. And you'll get a lot out of your teachers that way.
Thank you for that. Dr. Sean Jenright was on the show for the beginning of season 5. And he said that it's important that we focus on human development. And from the human development, we can then focus on the professional development. And so many people, as you're saying, as I agree with, are skipping the human development. It's like, get to the action, get to the work, get to the action, get to the work. And then when people burn up, it's like, well, what happened? Because you skipped the human development and you feel like this workplace is not a place for human development. How is it not when we're there 8, 9, 10 hours a day? Right? It has to be a part of that. All of these things are true, right? Checking in with people. And it's not just a coffee cup filled with candy at, every teacher appreciation. There's things that need to be done to support educators year round. I appreciate you saying that. And I would hope that the trend is it's not a trend, but things are actually moving in the direction of schools, districts, and unions pausing long enough to talk about and be and having this wellness space. You and I talked earlier that, this couple weekends ago, I was asked by the NEA, the National Education Association, to come in and create a space for them for the wellness of their educators. And we want more of that, right? More of that in our 9 to 5, more of that at conferences, more of that in our spaces. And there is time for that. There's always time for our healing and our wellness. So I appreciate you saying that. The next question is there a Black educator that you would like to shout out, or Black educators?
Yeah. So the one that comes to mind, and I apologize to my folks if I'm not shouting you out, but one that comes to mind is my best friend, Breon Scott. She is a dean, which is equivalent to an assistant principal. We both were assistant principals at the same time, and she's still in it and she's still doing her thing. And I know one day, she wants to go higher up and do her thing, and just an amazing human being, just an amazing leader. And Bree, when you watch this, I love you. I'm proud of you, and just continue to do great work.
Yeah, thank you. And our last question, we've been talking about wellness. We're talking about other people being well. For you, what does it mean to be well?
It's the little things. To be well, to me, it means to have peace, to have joy. I mean, the fruits of the spirit. It's when you really think about those things, am I able to love? Like, what's love look like in my life? Am I able to give love? Am I able to receive love? Do I have peace? Am I a peaceful person? Like, do people want to be around me, or they're like, ugh, every time when you come around, what does that look like? Am I kind? Am I good? Like, show goodness and kindness to people. Being faithful, like in the sense of, do I keep my word? Am I showing up for people in a way that, not necessarily the way that I want them to show for me, but am I showing up for people? Being consistent and really being kind to myself. I came across a journal entry a couple months back because I've always journaled throughout my life. And this journal, I think I must have had it during my college years. And I had just made a transition because I started off at the University of Kansas. And then after 2.5 years, I transitioned to Wichita State, which is where I ultimately graduated. And during that time, you kind of asked about my parents' reactions to things. And I'm sure during that time, they were like, I can't believe that we didn't move you down here. Now we're moving you back. And there was probably a lot of disappointment. And in this journal entry, I'm just going in on myself. I'm just like, you're this, you're that, you're lazy, you're this. And it was just like, I started crying, at this age, 39, reading this, me writing this to my 19-year-old, 20-year-old self. And then I started listing out all of the things that I've accomplished. Like, Whitney, like, you're actually this. Like, I don't know what was going on at that time, but I wasn't speaking kindly to myself. But now that's something that I try to make a practice of, because we can sit all day long and look at all of our flaws and all of the things that we're doing wrong. I'm not saying that I'm just perfect at it, because I'd be like, girl, I cannot believe that you did X, Y, and Z. But then I had to try to reframe that thinking of, but you're not perfect. You're human. People make mistakes, right? So being kind to myself, finding time to rest without guilt. Because sometimes I feel like I got to be busy. Matter of fact, like when I quit, people probably say, why you keep saying like you quit your job? Like when I resigned from my job, I had space where I was in transition trying to figure out what does that look like of me working all the time and like having zero free time. So now I'm kind of like in these entrepreneurial spaces, like the time looks different. I would be trying to make up stuff to do. Like it was crazy because I felt like I had to be on. I was still waking up at like 5, 6 in the morning, getting on my computer, cleaning out my emails and all these things. Now, granted that some of those things I needed to do because it was in preparation for what was to come, but I still didn't need to be as busy as I thought I needed to be. But I thought that I wasn't worthy of having rest. I wasn't worthy of free time. It's some crazy psychological stuff that we got going on that we have to rewire. So yeah, I try to be very purposeful with rest. I'm not always great at it, but yeah, just being kind to myself every day. in the smallest way.
How can folks find you if they're interested in having your organization or your nonprofit or for-profit come to their school or work with you to build out rest plans? Like, how can they find you?
Absolutely. So my email address is whitney.tolliver with 2 L's at theteacherretreats.org. You can also follow us on Facebook, The Teacher Retreat, Instagram at The Teacher Retreat, LinkedIn. I think the handle or whatever is The Teacher Retreat. Everything is The Teacher Retreat. And you'll see our logo. It's like a T and an R and an apple. So if you see the black and red logo, that's us. We're doing lots of things all around the DFW area, always looking for partnerships in order to help bring these experiences to educators. Because one of the things that we do with the Teacher Retreat is we know that teachers are busy. We know that sometimes it can be hard to leave school and then go to do your leisure activities. So we like to push into the schools and provide those activities. So it may be like an after school activity, or like yesterday, we were asked to come in the middle of the day and do a session where they got to paint. We also have outside activities. We have mixers, we have gardening events. So when it comes to the teacher retreat, we're all about having a good time and meeting the needs of everyone, because we understand that some people may not like mixers, but you like to garden. You may not like to garden, but you like to paint, or you like to do bracelet making. So just making sure that we are covering the bases for everyone.
Yeah, thank you. All right, folks, check out Whitney. Check out the teacher retreat. If you're an admin, if you're a teacher, dean, whomever, find her. Get in there. Make sure you talk to her, connect. And Whitney, we really appreciate you coming on and speaking to us and sharing your story. Lot to talk about, a lot to think about. And all right, folks, we'll talk to you later. Peace.
One more thing, if you don't mind, can I add? I know she already said peace. She concluded. So since this is the year of 2026, I am turning 40. I know I only look, 21. I get it. Excuse these gray hairs. But
Good.
one of the things that we're doing is we're running a campaign to have folks donate $40 in honor of myself, the founder of the Teacher Retreat. So be on the lookout for that donation link. If you see it, if you can't donate, that's totally fine. Pass it to someone that can. If you can donate $5, $4, all of these things go back to the educators that we serve. But we can't do it without partnerships. We can't do it without donations. So in honor of me, in lieu of gifts, this would make my heart so happy. Donate $40.
Y'all can do that, folks. Y'all can
Please.
donate that $40, 50 maybe. All right.
I love it.
I love it. Thank you, Whitney. We'll talk to y'all later. All right. Peace for real this time. Bye. Thank you for joining us for today's episode of The Exit Interview, a podcast for Black educators. Every story shared here is a reminder that our wellness matters and that thriving in education is possible when we create spaces of care and belonging. If today's conversation spoke to you, we'd love to keep in touch. You can sign up for our newsletter at exitinterviewpodcast.com or connect with me on LinkedIn to stay up to date on upcoming workshops, consulting opportunities, and ways we're transforming stories into solutions through Alliance Educational Consulting. And before you close out, take a deep breath. Remember that caring for yourself isn't extra, it's essential. Whether you're an educator seeking rest or a school leader reimagining support, you're part of this growing community of care.